So I'm excited to be here with my new friend, Mershad Javan. And Mershad has over 20 years of experience in the music industry. As an entrepreneur, he has grown from being a songwriter, signed to major record labels, to joining publishing companies, taking on executive roles. He's now helped grow two companies for significant exits, both as a founding CEO and a hired C-level operator. And he served as a venture partner with top-tier venture capital firms in California and Zurich. And I'm really excited to connect with them today about the platform Octiive and something that he's working with specifically related to distribution for indie artists. And to touch on sort of the issue or sort of like a place that we find ourselves in right now, especially as indie artists, where we have the ability to connect and kind of distribute and share our music easier than ever before. But in a lot of cases, we feel pressured to appear bigger or kind of different than we already are. And so one thing that in the short time that we've talked backstage that I've already appreciated about Mershad was really focusing on authentic growth and real connection and the numbers that matter. So looking forward to having a conversation today and appreciate you being on the podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. And likewise, it's always a cool conversation when it comes to music and music tech and so forth. So appreciate it.
Absolutely. So yeah, maybe to kick things off, if you could share a little bit of an introduction for anyone that's listening to this right now, who this is their first time meeting you. We talked a little bit about this backstage, but could you share just a little bit about your introduction and how Octiive was started and kind of the heart behind the company?
Yeah, certainly. So the boring formal side of it, my background's in business. I went to school for business, but I've always been, as you and I kind of kicked it off earlier, just a music geek, a huge musician, music fan. Started out in bands, playing guitar and singing, and really with just a bunch of buddies that you would co-write with and so forth. That led to my, I guess, passion and fascination for the music industry. And I guess the bullet point version of it was through that experience and process and having worked, we got a demo deal with a major label. We completely fizzled out and failed, but I was just always curious how everything worked. And then you start seeing these voids, I guess, for independent musicians. That's the lack of resources. And so ultimately, we started as a company called Mondo Tunes. And that was really to help the independent musicians get the same distribution channel and resources or range as more established artists. And it used to be just major labels that had our artists. Now it's come down and you see a lot more emerging artists that are independent. But that was really the whole focal point behind it. And to tie that all up, I mean, we grew fast. We were a California-based company at the time. Since we've expanded, and we sold a large stake actually to a UK-based media company, a large media company that took a big chunk of it. So, and that's when we transitioned it to Octiive, or rebranded as Octiive. So Mondo Tunes is, a lot of people still know that, and then we obviously rebranded as Octiive as we stand today.
Awesome. The intro was cut out just a little bit for me, but I think I got everything that you're saying there. So, having both, in your own music career, had firsthand experience with distributing your music and, being one of the fortunate to actually get signed to a major record label deal. And, I'm sure you've sort of been along for this ride, this journey through the transformation of distribution as it related to kind of pre-internet and post-internet. And so I'm curious to hear your perspective now, both having gone through that yourself and having worked with a large number of artists and indie artists who are currently in the industry. What are some of the biggest challenges that you see artists struggling with right now related to distributing their music?
The main thing is, I think, this unnecessary pressure for every artist to come out and immediately capture all sorts of marketing and promotional, basically, hype, really more than anything else. And I think that is really doing just kind of a disservice to independent musicians, rather than focusing on really writing and putting out the best things, even if it takes a little bit longer. So with us, although we cater to a high volume distribution channel, but we see a lot of artists just putting out stuff like incomplete material and saying, let me just put this out and I'll just work on the next thing, rather than how can you make that the best version of itself and then keep going. So that, and with the lack of patience for marketing and really building a brand, a sustainable brand, is one thing that we see constantly. And it does happen, right? I mean, those things, call it overnight. I mean, there's always a lot of hard work behind it, but artists should realize it's going to take hard work and time. And you have to have that patience and perseverance to continue on.
Makes a lot of sense. So it sounds like what you're saying is that one of the challenges or mistakes is because of the pressure because so much, so much of the internet is public. It's like, especially Spotify, like you go to your profile and you can see when you have less than 1,000 streams, and there's like a certain amount of social clout. And with social media, like there's certainly like, there's a big difference if you go to a page and it seems like it has a lot of engagement versus if it's someone that's just starting out. So it sounds like what you're saying is that part of the issue is that because of that pressure, sometimes artists kind of lean towards short-term solutions, kind of cut corners to artificially boost their numbers as opposed to like really focusing on the core heart of what will actually help them grow. Could you share a few examples of like what are some of the most common use cases you see or common mistakes in terms of like if someone's listening to this right now, what are some of those tactics or strategies that you see as maybe being somewhat beneficial short term, but maybe not aimed in the right direction?
Yeah, certainly. So suppose we'll say, I mean, if you see something online and if it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true, right? So a lot of these artists, unfortunately, will buy or team up with companies that promise a number of streams, right? And that's just it's impossible to do that, right? So when you read, we'll get you 10,000 on Spotify, 5,000 on Apple Music, it's artificial. And what happens is you're going to get dinged for it. And the issue there is, and I think you've probably seen it, most have, they're cracking down, right? Streaming companies, for good reason, they're cracking down and saying, hey, we don't want to, funnel a bunch of mediocre stuff. And we want to start championing good music. So that's a big one that we tell all our artists. Don't do it. I mean, if someone's promising you that, it just can't happen. You have to really build a true fan base. And I think there are some good services coming out now that do help with that, kind of a fan fave type of thing, or the super fans that you can start connecting with and have almost like the old street team, right? But it's all digital, and have people really help you start promoting your music. But all of that does start with the foundation of a good song, good music, getting back to, roots of really writing meaningful songs, good chord progressions, good melodies, good lyrics that connect, the hooks, going back to that and so forth. So that's the one I would say. And if there's a big red flag, don't do the bots, don't do the magic marketing companies that overpromise stuff, and you will get flagged, and you're the one that's going to lose because your stuff's going to get taken down, and then your brand takes a hit and so forth.
Absolutely. Yeah, it seems like there's like a double-sided issue when you buy fake streams or fake followers, and that like one, you're paying money for artificial or bots that aren't actually going to pay you money. So like there's the value, it's not sustainable because you're not earning enough back from like the investment. But then two, you artificial like your algorithm that basically suggests recommended music. It's all sort of messed up because the platform doesn't know who to recommend because it's all a bunch of bot artificial traffic. So any of that benefit that you get from organic is just gone because you sort of seeded the platform with the wrong type of traffic. It's funny that you mentioned building a street team. Street Team is actually the name of a software platform that we're developing right now with Modern Musician that is exactly positioned the way that you described. Like the main purpose is to help artists connect with their fans and kind of modernize the idea of what the traditional Street Team was. So definitely on the same wavelength there.
And that's awesome. I'd love to hear more about that. Who's a big fan of that, and I'm a big fan of him, WMG CEO now, Robert Kinkle, who's really behind the super fan tools and service offers. And I think they're building their own. I'm sure they're building something there as well. But they're huge on it. They feel that that's going to be the next driver for, again, connecting fans, musicians, and vice versa to discover good music. So that's awesome. You guys are right, exactly where you should be.
We should definitely connect on that after the episode. So when we talk about this idea of focusing on building real connections and building a relationship with those fans, or kind of building those true fans, what are some ways that an artist can do that in a world where there is so much online kind of noise? And with Spotify, it's kind of hard to message or connect with your fans. You don't really have that direct line of access. Have you seen any creative ways that artists have been able to build those types of relationships? And do you have any tips for people that are listening right now in terms of how they can focus on the right thing as opposed to like artificial streams?
Yeah, and I wish there was a more formulated way, right, to do that. And because what works for me perhaps doesn't work for you and your fan base. But I think first and foremost, obviously it's almost like the needs to be unsaid, but really honing down your social media with, again, good followers that truly actually care about your music, not buying things, not trying to buy for the sake of the vanity and numbers, but building a solid base that is fan of your music. Because if I have 500 and you have 50,000, but my 500 are legitimate followers that actually like the music I'm putting out, the chances of that spreading, obviously, it's much higher than what your 50,000 was completely unknown, and what that may result in. So I think to start focusing on that, really good content, again, good music, and putting things out. And then there are good companies out there that you can potentially team up with. One of my favorite ones is a company called Fave. It's a CEO that I love. Her name is Jaquel. I have no skin in the game, just other than loving the company. And they do a really good job, and it's exactly that. It's, to me, very good, selective, and proven ways to connect the artist and musician with their core fans. And that catches like fire once you start really building on that. And if they're truly passionate about what it is that you do. I'm sure if someone's listening, I'm sure they wanted some sort of a, maybe a better answer, just kind of a magic button for that, but there really isn't. But I do think it does start with, again, good content, good music, and start building it from, the ground floor with solid communication and messaging and materials that you put out there.
That definitely makes sense. Yeah. So it sounds like what you're saying is, to start with, you need to make sure that you're reaching the right people, because if they're not real people or they're bots, then then it doesn't matter regardless. Yeah, but once you actually know that this is someone that is a real person, a real fan, then it's just about building a connection with them, building a relationship. And there's different ways to do that. There's different like mediums for it, but really it is that, like, at its core. What it reminds me of is when I was first starting with my band Paradise Fears, about 10 or 12 years ago now. One of the things that we did that, but honestly, like I would say, this is one of the best or number one things that we ever did to build our audience, was we started to walk up to fans who are waiting in lines for shows. And some of our favorite bands would have thousands of people waiting on the sidewalk. And so we would literally just walk up and introduce ourselves and ask if they wanted to listen to a clip of our song. And that worked so well that we decided to go out and follow tours for about 6 months. There was 6 of us in the band. We followed different tours, and if people liked the music, we would offer a CD. And we sold 24,000 CDs doing that in about 6.5 months.
That's awesome.
And that was like the big break for us, and the thing that helped us to kind of enter the market. But it really comes back to what you're describing with, it's about building a real connection with the actual fans. In this case, these were fans where that they're true fans because they spent money to be at a show. They're waiting in line for the show. I really think that there was something about that connection of us like meeting them and having conversations with them. So any way that you can have a conversation with fans, regardless of if it's a online conversation or a Zoom conversation or an in-person conversation, it seems like that's a great way to think about building that initial connection.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it just makes it more personable, right? I mean, and that connection, I think it's second to none over any kind of text and so forth. But it's funny you mentioned that. My band, we would do the same thing. It's kind of the same strategy a little bit. Again, I'm gonna definitely age myself, but it was burning CDs with our songs at the time. Digital was there, but not in the same fashion as a streaming world now. And then we would find bands like, we love Weezer and bands like Jimmy Eat World and so forth. And we'd go to those concerts and pass them out. Here's a free CD, here's for your music. There's ways that you can do that digitally now, right? I mean, you can easily share links. There's all sorts of, like the Last FMs, or the Last Future FMs. There's different companies that you can easily, quickly share your links with all your streaming sites and so forth. But you're right. I think the effort needs to be there, and that's the key. It's how do you just put together a game plan, and it's thinking like an entrepreneur. At the end of the day, you're an entrepreneur that's pushing a product, and that product is you, right? Or your band. And so how do you put together a game plan? And once you do, how do you put some sort of a just action items to execute and go out and do it? And yes, most of the times it's not going to work. It's not going to get you the results that you want immediately, but something will click, and then you can start building on that. So just getting out there, getting active, and pushing digitally, physically, whatever it is, I think it's really key. And most people, you just don't see that as much anymore. I think most people are hoping that it somehow just virally catches on, whatever that means these days. And that's the end of it. Like someone's going to find it and it's going to spread and then it's on. Good luck with that, right? So hard work still has to be there, right? Entrepreneur
Mm,
mindset has still kind of has to kind of dictate and drive it.
100%. Yeah, and that kind of leads me to a question that yeah, I think will be based on your experience, both as an entrepreneur and throughout your life experience. I think that you probably will have a good answer to this, and it's more of like a human slash like business 101 kind of question. But I think it's relevant to the conversation that we're having right now around building an audience and kind of putting yourself out there and having those conversations. Just in general, building relationships with your customers or other artists. If you're a musician and you want to go on tour with another artist, for example, I'm curious if you have any advice for how do you approach and build these relationships in a way that isn't just, I don't know, spammy or isn't just like, hey, like go listen to my music or go like me, like do this thing for me. But how do you actually build a meaningful relationship with those fans? And if whether you're using online social media to have those conversations or in person, I'm curious if you have any recommendations for just like general relationship best practice in order to be able to build a network.
Yeah, oh man, that's a really really good question. And you're right. It's hard to do without kind of the whether you want to call it the cold approach or the cold call element at some point, right? And how do you do that without being intrusive or just being annoying, right? If somebody is sitting in line, they're already in line to get in a favorite band, like how do you make that approach? And I don't think there's a perfect answer to that, but I think not doing it is not in your favor. But I will say this. So if you are going to reach out, first of all, let's start with the digital aspect, right? If you are going to make some outreach attempts, I wouldn't use again some sort of software tool, like there's a bunch I won't name them, but we're sending it out and you're customizing it, right? It's basically, hey Michael, and then the body the same. It's the same email going out there because eventually that will come across as spam, right? So if you're going to make that outreach, finding whatever amount of people, you almost have to personalize it and reach out with that intention. Like I want this person potentially as a fan or this person to hear my music. Maybe it's potential business relationship or some sort of a strategic partnership, right? Because we get it a lot. And I think I mentioned I'm also, a venture partner at a VC. We get that a lot as well. And you could tell when it's completely just a drafted mass email attempt. And even if I had interest, I would just be turned off. So somehow you have to do that. And then the physical aspect, it's almost the same. I think the way you said it is it's going and saying, hey, how's it going? My name is Mershad. I don't want to intrude, but I see you're waiting in line here. My band or my music, we're huge fans of them, and I'd love to. If you're interested, if you have a few minutes, if you want to check out something new, I would be completely honored, right? And yeah, you're gonna get some no's, like man, I have no time. But you're also gonna probably get some people that appreciate the fact that you did that. So I think there's still that holds a lot of clout, and I think it's a good way to go about it. If you're thinking fast, yeah, the numbers may not make sense on a spreadsheet in your favor. Like, oh, I want to reach out to 10,000 people this weekend. Okay, that's not going to work. But if you are looking at building grassroots, which is also a good way, and then you start getting those super fans, I think that's still your best approach. Or unless you have referrals, right? Referrals are obviously probably the strongest, but let's just discount that and say that's not an option or it's a limited option. I think that's your best approach.
Got it. Super smart. Yeah. So it sounds like what you're saying is that when you are approaching someone, as much as possible, you want to make sure that it's personalized. So it's not sort of a cookie cutter, obviously generic post that you're just mass emailing out to a bunch of people. And generally, you can tell the difference between, if someone's just copying and pasting like the exact same message to everyone versus actually putting some real intention into personalizing it. And then aside from that, you're just being willing to show up and like potentially be rejected. If someone says no thanks, like in fact, that's definitely going to happen. I mean, I know for us, like, we had plenty of people who said no thanks, like, we don't want to talk to you. And like,
no, sorry to cut you off, but I was going to say, I mean, yeah, welcome to the rest of your life. I mean, yes, that's going to happen. I have
mm-hmm.
relationships, businesses. If you're in school, right, you have to go through this process. I think it's such a good learning curve. Getting a no or getting that rejection. And I do think that
Mm.
sifts out the ones that really aren't maybe meant to do it. And those challenges, obviously, is such a setback for them to stop. Then I think it does sift out, those ones. And then the ones that are actually meant to continue on have better odds for it. So, but yes,
Mm.
you expect to get obviously the denials and rejections and so forth.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's such a good personal growth opportunity. And there's so many examples of extremely successful, creatives or authors who got rejected, hundreds of times before writing like a bestseller. I mean, the one that comes to mind is I think J.K. Rowling had submitted Harry Potter to hundreds of publishers and basically got rejected by all of them. And it does seem like learning how to make a proposal or make an offer and graciously be rejected and learning how to not take it personally is something that's a really valuable skill set just for the rest of your life.
Man, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Absolutely.
Mm.
You'll learn a lot more from that than getting a bunch of yeses. 'Cause where do you go from there?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's sort of like if you're shooting a free throw and if you're just aiming the whole time but you never actually let go, then you'll never miss it, but like you also can never make it, and you'll never get any feedback to know like, oh, I should probably like aim to the left. So it's always better to, if you want to get good at shooting free throws, like shoot as many as possible and make sure you're aiming, but like learn from it. Don't just shoot once every 3 months. Like you try to be consistent with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said.
So let's talk a little bit about Octiive and and maybe the current status of the music industry as it relates to like distribution. And I'm curious what you see right now. Like obviously there's some big shifts that are happening and waves, both related to developments of technology with like AI, music generative tools, but also just in terms of the internet and like how music is distributed, the channels that are available to indies versus signed artists. I'm curious right now for anyone that's listening to this, what are some of the biggest opportunities that they have around distributing their music? And maybe you could share a little bit more about Octiive and sort of the heart behind what the platform is for.
Yeah, for sure. So, just like most companies, we've also gone through the process of, I want to say transformation, but we're constantly learning and just trying to see what we can improve, what better service offering we can offer to our end user, in our case, being musicians and artists. We started as a digital music distribution company, as I mentioned, Mondo Tunes. And then eventually we saw that artists with digital tools, especially with DAWs like the Pro Tools and Logics and so forth, GarageBand even, people are now more prolific about writing songs. So at that time, it was like, okay, how can we cater to this? Because now it's happening at a much more rapid pace to ensure that we can still provide resources and the tools for them to get music out faster. So then we really built and rolled out, really launched an unlimited upload model, which we still do today. So where we stand now, we still, of course, that's what we do, and we do that well. We do distribution. If you look at our value proposition, in my opinion, I think most hopefully would agree, it's probably the best in the market because we are a bunch of musicians, and our slogan of "By Musician for Musician" stands. But also, it's now with tools and being able to put out music so fast and so easily, and I feel like there's a lot of cutting corners. What else can we do to help now identify emerging artists and really start going after and supporting them more than anything else? Like you're doing exactly what you should be doing, and we've seen it from your earlier work. It's getting better and better and better and better, and it's kind of fun. It's funneling down in a sense. In conclusion to that, we do distribution and we continue to do that well, and we will continue to do it. We do want to add creator tools to help artists become their best selves, whatever that means, right? It's relatively to speaking to that artist. Let's get your best version of the song out. From there, we're getting behind artists from a label services standpoint, and I hate using that term, but still applies. It's getting behind them from, we can advance royalties now, just make advances, essentially saying, hey, we can help you with whatever it is. From a marketing perspective, we can get behind playlist pitching. We can help with all sorts of cross promotional stuff. We've expanded in Europe. So if you're in the States wanting to get out here or vice versa. So things like that. And then lastly, it's always a question of, cool, now my music is out. What else can you do for me? It's additional promotional tools. It's getting that one page where you can really direct all your fans into one spot and they can see your bio, your links, everything from an outgoing kind of marketing approach, and then also really important business intelligence. What information and data can we give you, Michael, as a songwriter, to make good sound decisions for your career? We're building a lot of good data analytics of here's all your social media. Here's, let's say if there's mentions about you out there, here's where it's at. Here's all your streams, data, sales, regions. If you're going on tour, here's the spikes and on a heat map, and here's the places that you should consider and so forth. So we're really packaging it all up to make sure that A, we stay relevant for the end user, and then B, we're helping artists really just put out better work and then get out there and hopefully start making more money as a musician. So at the end of the day, that's kind of where we're at. One thing I probably should mention, and again, the reason why I'm extremely excited about it. So we had sold the company, a large stake in it, once this past year, probably due to some stagnancy and just difference in visions and so forth. We actually reacquired the asset wholly. So it's almost like putting the band back together, bringing on some new
Mm.
key hires to really get behind the independent musicians, because it became a little bit too corporate and a little disconnected from what the average independent musician needs. And we feel that we're already back and really starting to kind of build that out with a lot of discussions, a lot of talks with musicians. What are you looking for? You left our platform once. Why? What can we do better? Let's re-engage, kind of thing. So I'm really excited about that part, and I'm learning a lot as so is our team as we kind of have these discussions ongoing.
Awesome. Yeah. So it sounds like really your approach is distribution is a piece of it, but you really want to take more of a holistic approach in terms of serving indie artists in particular who might not have access to a traditional record label deal, but things like advances for them, as well as like other tools for analysis of some of their numbers. They can figure out, better, where should we go on tour? What kind of shows should we play? Yeah, I guess one question would be just around like, clearly there are like different types of distributors or different platforms that an artist could use for distributing their music, like DistroKid or CD Baby or TuneCore and some like different ones. So I'm curious, like, what do you feel like is the main thing that distinguishes or that makes Octiive unique and the best platform for artists to be as it relates to distributing their music and kind of building their career?
Yeah, man, it's so all the companies you mentioned all have some great strengths. From an artist perspective, the good news there is when you have options, the consumer wins at the end of the day, right? So that's when you get the best deals, you get the best services, and so forth. The one thing we're extremely proud of is, first of all, our artist support. Literally within a couple hours, if you reach out to us, you're going to get somebody that respond. And I'm not talking about some bot-ish or AI or some kind of a custom template thing. We actually engage with every artist from a support standpoint, whether you're a current artist or potential artist. So our artist support, we're just proud of, and we take a lot of pride to make sure that we deliver exactly what you need. Again, being musicians first, like what can we help with? Value proposition wise, if you are, I mean, look, most independent musicians, I hate to say it, but I mean, kind of a broke bunch, but we love our music and our craft. And how can I best, optimize my music? How can I capitalize off of a service that's good for me? So, for us, we have the largest range, most regions, most places that you can get, most stores essentially and streaming platforms that you can get into for the least price. So the one thing I will say is if you go through the process, we say this is our price and it includes everything. And it legitimately includes everything. I can't say that based on our test, at least, to the others, because they'll say it starts with X amount of dollars. And then once you go through it, oh, do you want this store as well? Or do you want also this? Or do you want this service? Before you know it, your average transaction is much higher than what promoted you to come in. So I think that transparency for us is key. Great communication. Make sure your music's available everywhere, as transparent as it gets, and then let's try to do something long term. It's really all our mission.
Awesome. Well, that definitely makes sense, and it's very on track with the conversation that we had today around transparency and connection and really being real, as an artist with your community and just in general how you show up. So, Mershad, it's been great connecting today. I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the podcast, and For anyone here that's listening right now that's interested in checking out Octiive or diving deeper to connect more, where do you recommend that they go to touch base?
Website's best. Octave with two I's, OCTIIVE.com. Reach out to us, test us out. Give us, send us a quick note if you have any questions. Our guys will get back to you, ASAP. So we'd love to obviously have that traffic coming in, and anything we can do to help, we'd love to do it.
Awesome. Thanks, Mershad. So like always, I'll put the links in the show notes for easy access. And until next time. Yeah!